My name is Jessica. I'm 28 years old. Yesterday, I won $45 million. Today, I'm telling my boyfriend I'm penniless. I need to know if he loves me or just the bills I pay. The smell of burnt espresso usually clung to my hair for hours after my shift, but tonight it felt like it had seeped into my bones. The fluorescent lights of Bean and Brew flickered overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on the dirty countertop. "You're a saint, Jess," Mrs. Miller said, her voice shaking slightly as she counted out dimes for her decaf latte. She was my last customer, a sweet elderly woman with trembling hands and a kind smile that reminded me of a grandmother I never knew. "It's on the house, Mrs. Miller," I said, waving away the coins. "Consider it a Jagged Tuesday special." She patted my hand, her skin like papery parchment. "You give too much, dear. Make sure you save some for yourself." I watched her shuffle out into the rainy Seattle night, clutching her paper cup. Save some for myself. The irony tasted bitter. I checked my bank app while wiping down the steamer. Balance, $42.18. Rent was due in 3 days. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. It was Tyler. "Babe, pick up wings on your way home. I'm starving." No, "How was work?" No, "Thanks for working a double so we can pay the electric bill." Just a demand. I typed back, "I'm broke, Ty. Can you check the sofa cushions?" He didn't reply. I clocked out and walked to my car, a rusted Honda that had seen better decades. I turned the key. It made a sound like a dying cough, shuddered once, and died. "No, no, no," I whispered, resting my forehead against the steering wheel. I tried again, nothing but a hollow click. I dialed Tyler. It rang 4 times before he picked up. In the background, I could hear the chaotic noise of gunfire and explosions from his video game. "Yeah?" he answered, distracted. "Ty, the car died. I'm stuck at work. Can you come get me? It's pouring rain." "Seriously, Jess?" he groaned. "I'm in the middle of a ranked match. I can't just pause online multiplayer. Can't you take an Uber?" "I have $40 to my name, Tyler. I can't afford an Uber." "Fine," he snapped. "Just wait a bit. Or walk. It's not that far." Click. He hung up. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and frustrating. It was a 3-mile walk. I stepped out into the rain, pulling my thin jacket tighter around me. The water soaked through my sneakers instantly. Halfway home, shivering and furious, I ducked into a 24-hour gas station to escape a sudden downpour. The clerk, a bored teenager, didn't look up from his phone. I stared at the lottery display on the counter. The digital sign glowed neon red. Jackpot, $45 million. I never gambled. It was a tax on the desperate, my dad used to say. But tonight, soaked to the bone and feeling worthless, I was desperate. I pulled a crumpled $2 bill from my pocket, my tip from the lunch rush. "1 Powerball," I said, my voice cracking. "Please." The clerk printed the slip of paper. I shoved it into my wet pocket without looking at the numbers. It was a stupid waste of $2, but for a split second, holding that paper, I allowed myself to imagine a life where I didn't have to walk home in the rain. I woke up to the sound of a car backfiring outside, my head throbbing from a restless sleep. The sun was slicing through our thin, mismatched curtains, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Tyler was still asleep, a lump under the gray duvet, mouth open, snoring softly. I dragged myself out of bed, my feet hitting the cold laminate floor. The jeans I had worn yesterday were in a damp pile by the door. As I picked them up to toss them in the hamper, a crinkled slip of paper fell out. The lottery ticket. I snorted. Right, the tax on the desperate. I picked it up, intending to throw it in the trash, but curiosity, that nagging, irrational itch, made me pause. I pulled up the winning numbers on my phone, squinting against the screen's brightness. 04, 12, 28, 33, 41, Powerball, 07. I looked at the crumpled paper in my hand. 04, check. 12, check. 28, check. My breath hitched. The room suddenly felt very small and very quiet. I read the next two numbers, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. 33, 41. Check, check. I looked at the final number, the Powerball, 07. The world tilted. I actually had to grab the edge of the dresser to keep from falling over. A sound escaped my throat, a strangled yelp that I quickly stifled with my hand. $45 million. The numbers on the screen blurred as tears filled my eyes. We're free, I thought. The debt, the broken car, the double shifts, the constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. It was all gone. I looked at Tyler. He shifted in his sleep. I wanted to jump on the bed, wake him up, and scream that we were rich. I wanted to tell him that his crypto schemes didn't matter anymore, that I could buy him the best gaming setup in the world, that we could move to a house with a garage and a garden. But first, I needed water. My mouth was dry as sand. I tiptoed out of the bedroom and into our tiny kitchen to get a glass of water, clutching the ticket so tight my knuckles turned white. As I drank, I heard the bedroom door creak open, followed by the sound of Tyler's voice. He must have woken up when I left the room. I turned to go back in, bubbling with the news, but stopped dead when I realized he wasn't talking to me. He was on the phone. "Hey, Mom, chill out," Tyler said. His voice was low, annoyed. "I know she's not the one. You think I don't know that?" I froze in the hallway, the glass of water trembling in my hand. "She's just convenient, okay?" he continued, letting out a yawn. "She pays the rent, she buys the groceries. If I dump her now, I'd have to move back into your basement, and neither of us wants that." A cold numbness started in my toes and spread up my legs. "Just give it 6 more months," he said, laughing, a cruel, dismissive sound. "Once this new coin launches and my portfolio moons, I'm upgrading. Seriously, Mom, you should see the girls on Instagram I've been DMing. Jessica is just dead weight. Useful, but dead weight." Dead weight. The glass slipped from my fingers. I managed to catch it before it hit the floor, but water sloshed over my hand, cold and shocking. The excitement of the $45 million vanished, replaced by a nausea so violent I almost threw up. 3 years. I had worked double shifts for 3 years to support his dreams. I had walked home in the rain while he played video games. I looked down at the ticket in my other hand. If I walked in there right now and showed him this paper, he would marry me tomorrow. He would be the perfect boyfriend. He would love me, or pretend to, for the rest of his life. No. I shoved the ticket in the waistband of my pajama pants, hiding it under my oversized t-shirt. I took a deep breath, wiping the tears from my cheeks. My face hardened. The Jessica who walked home in the rain was gone. I walked into the bedroom, quickly hung up the phone and looked at me, his face shifting into a mask of fake innocence. "Hey, babe," he said. "Who was that?" "My mom," he lied smoothly. "Just checking in. You okay? You look pale." I stared at him. I saw the grease in his hair, the selfishness in his eyes. "I have bad news, Tyler," I said. My voice was steady, terrifyingly calm. "What?" "I just got an email from work. They're cutting staff. I was fired this morning, effective immediately." I watched his face drop. "I lost my job," I repeated. "We have no money." The silence that followed my announcement was heavy, suffocating. Tyler didn't rush to hug me. He didn't say, "We'll figure this out." He dropped his phone on the bed and ran a hand through his hair, letting out a sharp, angry exhale. "Are you serious, Jess? Fired? For what? You're their best employee. You practically run that dump." "Budget cuts," I said, keeping my gaze fixed on his forehead. I couldn't look him in the eye. I was afraid he'd see the burning rage behind my apathy. "The owner is downsizing." "Great, just great," he muttered, pacing the small room. He kicked a pile of laundry. "So, what are we going to do about rent? It's due in 3 days." "I don't know," I said softly. "Maybe you could pick up some shifts, or sell the gaming PC?" Tyler whipped around, his face flushed. "Sell the rig? Are you insane? That's my investment, Jessica. That's how I'm going to make our millions. I can't just sell it for pennies because you couldn't hold down a job." Because I couldn't hold down a job? The audacity was breathtaking. "I'm going to shower," I said, turning away before I slapped him. In the bathroom, I locked the door and turned on the shower to mask the sound of my sobbing. I cried for 5 minutes, mourning the relationship I thought I had. Then I stopped. I washed my face with cold water. I reached into my pajama waistband and pulled out the ticket. It was still dry. I wrapped it in 3 layers of toilet paper, put it inside a Ziploc bag, and taped it to the underside of the toilet tank lid. It was a cliché hiding spot, but Tyler never cleaned the bathroom. It was the safest place in the house. Over the next week, the apartment transformed into a war zone. I spent my days looking for work, which actually meant sitting in the public library researching trust funds and wealth management lawyers on the free computer. I contacted a high-profile attorney in downtown Seattle, a man named Mr. Henderson. I used the last of my savings to buy a thrift store blazer so I wouldn't look like a vagrant when I met him. "You want to claim the prize anonymously via a blind trust," Mr. Henderson confirmed, peering at me over his spectacles in his mahogany-paneled office. "Smart, very smart for someone your age." "I have reasons," I said, staring at the view of the city skyline. Somewhere down there, in a cramped apartment, Tyler was probably screaming at a 12-year-old on Call of Duty. "We can have the funds secured by Friday. The money will be yours, but on paper, Jessica Davis is still destitute." Perfect. When I returned home that evening, the atmosphere was toxic. The power had been shut off for 2 hours before Tyler paid it with his emergency fund, money he'd stolen from my purse months ago, I suspected. I sat on the couch. "Tyler, I really need help. Can we borrow money from your parents?" "No," he snapped, not looking up from his screen. "I told them we're fine. I'm not going to look like a failure because of you." I pulled out my phone. I needed a friend. I texted Ashley. "Hey Ash, things are really bad. Lost my job. Tyler is being a nightmare. Can I come over for a bit? Just need to vent." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Hey babe," her message read. "So sorry to hear that, sad face. Honestly, I'm super swamped right now with work and stuff, and the vibe is kinda heavy. I really need to protect my energy right now. Maybe we can hang when things are better. Good luck." Blocked. I stared at the screen. Ashley, who had cried on my shoulder when her cat died. Ashley, whose rent I had covered twice in college. Protecting her energy? I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound in the quiet apartment. "What's so funny?" Tyler asked, aggressively from his desk. "Nothing," I said, standing up, just realizing how much lighter I'm about to feel. The envelope in my hand was bright red. It was a standard pay or quit notice, an eviction warning. I had deliberately transferred my rent money into my new secret trust account instead of the landlord's portal, triggering the automatic letter. It was the final test. I walked into the living room. The air smelled like stale pepperoni and sweat. Tyler was slumped in his gaming chair, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in his glassy eyes. "Tyler," I said, my voice trembling, not with fear but with adrenaline. "Look at this." I dropped the red envelope onto his keyboard. "Hey, I'm in a match," he shouted, batting the envelope away. It fluttered to the floor. "We're getting evicted," I said, cutting through his noise. "We have 3 days to pay or we're out. I need you to pull from your crypto savings. Just $500. That's all we need to hold them off for a week while I find a job." Tyler paused. He slowly took off his headset, setting it down with exaggerated care. He spun his chair around to face me. The look in his eyes wasn't panic, it was pity. "We?" he scoffed. "There is no we anymore, Jess." My stomach dropped, even though I had expected this. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm not throwing my money into a sinking ship," he said, standing up. He towered over me, using his height to intimidate. "You messed up. You lost your job. You didn't pay the rent. That's on you." "I supported you for 3 years," I whispered, my voice rising. "I paid for this apartment. I paid for that computer. I paid for the food in your stomach." "And that was your choice," he shrugged, walking past me toward the bedroom. "Nobody forced you to be a doormat." I followed him. He wasn't looking for money to help, he was pulling a suitcase out of the closet. He began throwing his clothes into it, the designer hoodies I had bought him for Christmas, the sneakers I had saved up for. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I'm moving out," he said, not looking at me. "I can't live with a deadbeat. I have a life to build." "Where?" I demanded. "Where are you going, Tyler?" He zipped up the suitcase and smirked. "Ashley's." The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. "Ashley?" I repeated. "My best friend, Ashley?" "She's got a spare room," he lied, though his smirk betrayed him. "And she actually has a job. We've been talking. She gets me, Jess. She understands ambition. She thinks you've been holding me back." He hoisted his bag over his shoulder. He grabbed his gaming tower with his other hand. "You have until Friday to get your stuff out," he said, casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "Good luck, Jess. Try not to end up in a shelter." He walked out the front door. The slam echoed through the empty hallway, vibrating in my teeth. I stood frozen in the center of the room. The silence he left behind was deafening. I looked at the red eviction notice on the floor. He chose Ashley. He chose $500 over 3 years of love. A strange sound bubbled up in my throat. I thought it was a sob, but when it came out, it was a laugh. A dark, hysterical laugh. "Okay," I said to the empty room. "Okay." The apartment felt like a hollowed-out carcass. Without Tyler's noise, the constant clicking of his keyboard, the drone of the television, the silence was absolute. I didn't take much. I left the sofa I had bought, I left the dishes, I left the curtains. I only packed 2 duffel bags with my clothes, my laptop, and the few sentimental items that Tyler hadn't managed to break or pawn over the years. I placed my keys on the kitchen counter next to the eviction notice. I didn't look back. My Honda groaned as I started it, the engine rattling in protest against the cold drizzle. I drove aimlessly for an hour, the windshield wipers slapping back and forth like a metronome counting down the seconds of my old life. I could have gone to a 5-star hotel. I could have booked the presidential suite at the Four Seasons downtown. I had the money now. The trust fund was active, and a sleek black debit card was burning a hole in my pocket. But I didn't feel like a millionaire. I felt like a refugee. I pulled into the Blue Moon Motel, a dilapidated roadside motel on the outskirts of the city with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like an angry hornet. It was the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. $40 a night, the clerk grunted. He was a heavyset man with grease stains on his shirt, watching a game show on a tiny TV behind bulletproof glass. Cash, I said, sliding 2 20s under the partition. Room 104 smelled of stale cigarette smoke and lemon disinfectant. The carpet was sticky, and the bedspread was a floral pattern that hadn't been stylish since 1985. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and slid the chain into place. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. This was it, the rock bottom. My phone buzzed, a notification from my new bank app. Deposit cleared, $45 million. Available balance, $45 million. I looked at the number. Then I looked at the water stain on the ceiling. A laugh bubbled up in my chest, but it mutated into a sob before it reached my lips. I curled up on the bed, still wearing my coat, and let it out. I cried until my chest ached. I cried for the 3 years I wasted cooking dinner for a man who called me dead weight. I cried for the friendship I thought I had with Ashley. I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who thought love was about sacrifice, not partnership. The money didn't stop the tears. It couldn't fix the betrayal. But as the sobbing subsided and the room fell quiet again, I realized something. I was crying in a motel room, yes, but I wasn't crying because I was afraid of the future. I wasn't crying because I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I sat up. The mirror on the wall was cracked, distorting my reflection. I looked tired. My eyes were puffy, but my jaw was set. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "You've cried. You've mourned. Now get up." I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Henderson, my lawyer. It was late, but he answered on the second ring. "Miss Davis?" "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice raspy but steady. "I'm ready to move forward. I want to buy a house, and I want to buy a new car tomorrow." "Very good. Any specific preferences?" "Something impressive," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "Something they can't miss." The next 48 hours were a blur of high thread count sheets and the intoxicating scent of new leather. I checked out of the Blue Moon Motor Inn and checked into a reality where no was a word I no longer had to hear. I stood in the center of the Land Rover dealership showroom. My old sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor. A salesman with a smile that didn't reach his eyes approached me. He scanned my worn coat and tired face, his enthusiasm visibly dimming. "The used lot is around back, miss," he said, his voice dripping with polite condescension. "We have some very affordable sedans." I walked past him, running my hand along the hood of an obsidian black Range Rover autobiography. It was massive, aggressive, and beautiful. It looked like a tank designed for a CEO. "I'm not interested in a sedan," I said, opening the driver's side door. The smell hit me. Rich mahogany and pristine leather. It smelled like success. "Miss, please," the salesman sighed, stepping closer. "That vehicle starts at $160,000. Financing for that tier requires a substantial credit check, and—" "I don't need financing," I interrupted, pulling my black debit card from my pocket. It was heavy, made of metal. I held it up, catching the showroom light. "I'm paying in full, and I want it driven off the lot in an hour." The salesman's throat bobbed. He looked at the card, then back at me. The smirk vanished, replaced by a frantic, eager hunger. "Right away, ma'am. Can I get you an espresso? Sparkling water?" "Sparkling water," I said coldly, "with lime." Driving that car felt like piloting a spaceship. The world outside was quiet, dampened by soundproof glass. I glided through the rainy streets of Seattle, no longer a victim of the weather. My next stop was Nordstrom. I didn't want clothes. I wanted armor. I found it in the designer wing, a fitted crimson dress that hugged every curve, sharp and dangerous. It was the kind of dress that made you look like you owned the building. When I stepped out of the dressing room, the reflection staring back at me wasn't the tired barista who pleaded for rent money. It was a woman who could burn a city to the ground without striking a match. I was paying for the dress when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. My heart skipped a beat, then hardened into a lump of coal. New message, Ashley. Hey girlie, T and I are having a little housewarming party on Saturday at his new place. Well, our place now, lol. We know things are tough for you right now, but we'd love for you to come by. Maybe grab some leftover food. We just want no hard feelings. XOX. I stared at the text. The audacity was breathtaking. They didn't want no hard feelings. They wanted a front row seat to my misery. They wanted to see broken, homeless Jessica so they could feel better about their own treachery. Grab some leftover food. I typed my reply slowly, my thumb hovering over the send button. I'll be there. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat of my $160,000 car. Oh, I'll be there, I whispered to the empty cabin. Ashley's apartment complex was a beige, soulless block in the suburbs, the kind of place that tried to look upscale with a fountain out front, but smelled faintly of chlorine and despair. I pulled the Range Rover up to the curb, right behind Tyler's rusted sedan. The contrast was violent. My glossy black SUV looked like a panther crouching behind a dying mule. I killed the engine and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Red lipstick, sharp eyeliner, and eyes that had cried their last tear 3 days ago. Showtime, I whispered. I stepped out. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and black. My heels clicked rhythmically on the concrete, a countdown. I didn't knock. I walked right in. The door was unlocked for the party. The air inside was thick with the smell of cheap Chardonnay and Tyler's overpowering body spray. There were about 10 people there, our old college friends, people who had ghosted me the second I said I was broke. The music was loud, some generic pop beat, but it died instantly when I stepped into the living room. Silence rippled through the room like a shockwave. I wasn't wearing the baggy sweatshirt and jeans they expected. I was wearing the crimson dress, tailored to perfection. My hair was blown out, sleek and shiny. I held a clutch that cost more than Tyler's car. Jessica? Ashley broke the silence. She was holding a plastic cup of wine, wearing a pastel romper that looked suddenly childish next to my dress. Her eyes darted up and down my body, trying to compute the math. I thought you were struggling. Tyler emerged from the kitchen, a beer in hand. He stopped dead. His eyes went wide, then narrowed with suspicion. "What is this, Jess?" he scoffed, trying to regain control of the room. "Did you blow your unemployment check on a dress, or is that a rental?" A few people snickered nervously. They wanted me to be the joke. They needed me to be the disaster. "I'm just here for the leftovers, Ashley," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Isn't that what you offered?" I walked to the center of the room. The crowd parted. I stood directly in front of Tyler. He looked smaller than I remembered, sweaty, desperate. "You look good, Jess," he sneered, stepping closer to intimidate me. "But dressing up doesn't change the fact that you're homeless. Don't think you can just waltz back in here and beg for a second chance." "Beg?" I laughed. It was a genuine, amused sound. "Oh, Tyler, I didn't come here to beg. I came here to give you something." I opened my clutch. I pulled out a single, thick, white envelope. "What's this?" He snatched it from my hand. "An apology letter?" "Open it." The room was deadly silent. You could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Tyler tore open the flap. He pulled out 2 pieces of paper. The first was a screenshot, printed in high definition. It was the text he sent his mother. "Jessica is just dead weight. useful but dead weight. His face went pale. He looked up at me, mouth opening, but I pointed to the second paper. "Read the other one," I commanded. He shuffled the pages. The second sheet was a proof of funds statement from the Bank of Seattle. I watched his eyes scan the page. I watched them stop on the bolded number at the bottom. Balance, $45 million and 0 cents. Tyler choked. He literally choked on his own spit. He looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. His hands started to shake. The beer bottle slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor, foaming over his shoes. No one moved. "Is that," he wheezed, "is that real?" Ashley leaned over his shoulder to look. She gasped, a sound so loud it echoed. "$45 million? I won it the night before I told you I lost my job. I wanted to see if you loved me, or if you just loved that I paid your bills." I took a step back, looking around at the stunned faces of the friends who had abandoned me. "I was going to share it with you, Tyler. We were going to buy a house. We were going to travel. I was going to fund your stupid crypto startup." I smiled, and it was the coldest thing in the room. "But then you called me dead weight over $500. Tyler looked like he was going to vomit. He reached out a trembling hand toward me. "Jess, wait! Baby, wait! It was just, I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You know I love you." "No," I said, turning on my heel. "You loved the ATM, and the ATM is out of order." The sound of Tyler's voice screaming my name was drowned out by the roar of the Range Rover's engine. I saw him in the rearview mirror stumbling out into the rain in his socks, waving his arms like a drowning man. Ashley was in the doorway, frozen, watching her social status drive away. I didn't step on the brakes. I didn't look back. I merged onto the highway, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care about the speed limit. The city lights smeared into streaks of gold and red, washing away the grime of the last 3 years. I thought I would feel angry. I thought I would feel vindictive. But as the miles put distance between me and the parasites, I only felt one thing: lightness. It was as if I had been carrying a backpack full of stones and someone had finally cut the straps. 3 months later. The morning mist was still clinging to the hills when I stepped out onto the porch of my new home. It wasn't a mansion. I didn't need a fortress. It was a restored 1920s cottage on the edge of the Olympic Peninsula, surrounded by pine trees and silence. I wrapped my cashmere cardigan tighter around myself and inhaled the scent of damp earth and pine needles. No car horns, no angry gamers screaming in the next room, no eviction notices. I took a sip of my coffee. It was the best cup I'd ever had. Mostly because I brewed it in my own kitchen on my own time. My phone chimed on the wicker table next to me. I picked it up. It was an email from Mr. Henderson. Subject: transaction complete. Miller account. Dear Ms. Davis, the outstanding medical debt for Mrs. Edith Miller, $84,000, has been paid in full as requested. The hospital has informed her that it was covered by an anonymous donor charity program. She has no idea it was you. I smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through my chest. I pictured Mrs. Miller's face, the relief washing over her, the weight lifting from her frail shoulders. She had been the only person to treat me like a human being when I had nothing. She deserved to sleep soundly. I scrolled down. There was a second folder in my email marked junk. I opened it out of habit. It was full of emails from Tyler. "Jess, please talk to me. I messed up. I can change. Remember the time we went to the beach?" And one from Ashley. "Hey, I think there was a huge misunderstanding." I didn't read them. I didn't feel a spark of anger or a twinge of sadness. They were just echoes from a life that belonged to a stranger. I pressed select all, then delete, then empty trash. Gone. I set the phone down and looked out at the garden. A deer had stepped out from the tree line, its ears twitching as it grazed on the grass. It looked at me, unbrighted, and I looked back. The money had changed my zip code. It had changed my clothes. It had changed my car. But the real prize wasn't the $45 million in the bank. The real prize was sitting right here on this porch. It was the silence. It was the self-respect. It was the knowledge that the people in my life were there because they wanted to be, not because of what I could give them. I took another sip of coffee, watching the sun burn through the mist. You passed the test, Jessica. You finally passed.